Thank you, Katrina, and hello to everyone. I'm going to talk about change. The cliche that we often, all of us hear ourselves and say is the world is changing. We marvel at the way technologies are moving forward. But it's interesting the way our brain works and the psychology of this, because what we're often doing is not actually looking forward. We're looking at the way the world has changed. The way the mobiles we carry in our pockets today are so much more advanced than before. And that makes sense. We don't really know what's coming. We can talk about a lot of the advances that are occurring in this world. We've seen many of them discussed yet this morning and yesterday. But these are still a way away, and it's hard to conceptualize them. So we always think about the world is changing looking back. What I want to do, briefly, if you'll bear with me, is to talk a little bit about this future. And in many ways, it will be a summary, I think, of some of the things that have been discussed this morning and yesterday. But in order to do that, what I want to do is ask you to do something for me. It might be a little bit difficult for you. It might be a little bit distasteful for some of you. But I want you to think and pretend you're bankers. And I'm talking to you. Because for change to occur in financial services, it can't just be the upstarts, the startups that drive this forward. The banks, the traditional financial institutions, must be involved as well. They need to change. Banks carry a lot of trust, carry a lot of value for the customers, and that's something very, very hard to change. So I'm going to talk to you as though you're bankers for 5 or 10 minutes and talk a little bit about the world of tomorrow. In the next 10 to 15 years, our medical system will change. GP visits will be largely automated. The estimate is something like 70% of general practitioner visits will involve just a phone call where potentially, as Rohit was talking about earlier, you'll be talking to a chatbot, to an AI. An AI will be making a decision and diagnosing what's wrong with you and prescribing you medication. If not, you will have a centralized doctor who will leverage a whole set of wearable technologies and devices that you'll be more used to wearing to be able to diagnose exactly what's wrong. Nanobots will become staples of surgical procedures, cleaning your arteries, carrying out cellular level repairs. It was funny, I was talking to a friend of mine over a cigarette a couple of days ago, and I'd been meaning to quit for a long time, and I was saying we should quit. And he says, why should I bother? They'll be able to print me a new lung soon. Right? These things are already in development. We'll be able to print new organs, which will eradicate a lot of the problems when it comes to transplants and waiting lists. 3D printing is an incredible innovation that's going to have a huge impact in many industries. One of them will be in restaurants and food. The estimate is 90% of food that you will be served in restaurants will be 3D printed in the kitchen. Police forces will be automated. Surveillance technology, big data and machine learning will be utilized to be able to identify and manage crime and policing. You already have a huge prevalence in certain cities of monitoring devices. London has more cameras around the streets of the city than any other country in any other major city on the planet. Big Brother is genuinely watching you, and this is increasing. And they'll be able to utilize this technology to help better address crime. Autonomous vehicles, I think we're all now in the hype cycle where we understand that this is coming, but we will have driverless highways where only cars without people will be able to utilize. Hyperrail will be in process, the largest infrastructure project potentially of all time, likely to be across Europe, interconnecting cities at lightning speed. 3D printing again, 20% of construction projects, 3D printed buildings. Within the next 15 years, we will see the first city that will harvest 100% of its water from the atmosphere. I think this particular one is already sort of, you're getting a grasp of it. But in terms of the way we relate to technology, everything will be gesture, voice controlled. Digital will augment our senses. And our environments will be context sensitive. Advertising in particular will be able to make decisions and show us context-specific advertising based upon the way we walk, the way we talk, our smell, the friends we're with, our behaviors down the street. The Internet of Things, 20 billion connected devices today. The estimate, although people are beginning to revise this down, is that by 2020 there'll be approximately 35 billion connected devices. These devices will be autonomous and make decisions on our behalf. The fridge is the one that a lot of people quote, the example where the fridge will reorder your food for you when you're running out. All of these devices will be controlled by wireless technology, wireless energy. And finally, apparently, we'll be able to talk to our dogs. Cross-species communicators are in development. We are already beginning to see incredible advances in instantaneous language translation. There are devices available now on the market where you can put on a headset and talk to somebody in a foreign language, and you're essentially enacting what you've seen in Star Trek with the cross-language communicators. The question here to you, as I say, pretend you're bankers for 5 minutes. The question here is, if this is the world of the future, this is the environment around us, how can financial services, in the form it is today, in the form that is resisting a lot of change, continue to be the same? How do we feel that we will interact with financial services in the way we do today when everything around us has advanced so far? Now, yes, I said these technologies 10 to 15 years' time, so let's say 2030. This is the world in 2030. So we know that we have to do something because it can't be the way it is today in this world. The expectations of the customers, the behaviors of the customers will be significantly different because of what's happening around us. But if that's the world in 15 years, you need to ask yourself what you need to be doing before then in order to prepare. What do you need to be doing in 2025 to be ready for 2030? What do you need to be doing in 2020 to be ready for 2025? What do you need to be doing now to ensure you're on the right path to be where you need to be as our world changes? And the world is changing today. It is significantly different than it was before, and specifically around behaviors and what our expectations are. We've seen the prevalence of self-reliance go-getters in major decision-making over the past year. This is largely being blamed for the, essentially the rebellion against experts. Trump, Brexit. People don't want people telling them what to do. People now have the tools themselves to feel as though they can be confident to make those decisions themselves. Helicopter parenting is a fascinating term. Our lives are much busier than they were. Now, be it that that's through our own choices, but it's also because of the environment and the technology around us. I remember when I started work 20 years ago, there were no, well, we did have mobile phones, but not to the level of technology that the smartphone enables today. We were not connected, right? I don't know about you, but I mean, the last thing I do before going to sleep at night is check my email. You couldn't do that 20 years ago. We're doing many more things because of the technology around us, and we're multitasking throughout the day. Without question, I think this is an issue that has been very prevalent in the media about the millennial generation, the narcissism, the cult of me, largely driven by social media to some degree, but also driven by the environmental expectations that we as parents are putting onto our children, and the expectations to succeed and achieve at a very early age. An expectation that they are special and important. How do these things impact the way people interact with services? It's important. And obviously the technology that's around us in itself, I mean, Uber, you know, the purpose of ordering, the process of ordering a taxi has now become seamless. What's most interesting to me, Uber is one of the best fintech firms out there in that they've eradicated the friction of the payment process. Right? They've made the payment, the financial service, invisible. You focus on the transaction. I need a taxi to get home, and it happens. But all of these services really focus around simplicity, ease of access, usability. I mean, I find it fascinating that, you know, 15, 20 years ago, you'd buy a piece of software and it would come with an instruction manual. Do you remember that? Microsoft Office used to come with an instruction manual about that thick. Everything came with instruction manuals. Now, if you give an instruction manual to somebody, you've lost, right? That already means you've lost. Financial services, to be fair, is complex. Look at some of the terminology used. I live and work here in Luxembourg. The fund management sector is the largest fund management sector in Europe, outside of the US. It's number 2 in the world. Terms like UCITS. I mean, do people on the street know what a UCIT is? Do they want to know what it is? It's complex. Is it fit for purpose, fit for who we are, fit for our needs and behaviors? Even within fintech, I mean, you can't, and financial services, you can't ignore the fact that there is a lot of change. There's a lot of hype. The big media covers it. The FT, the Wall Street Journal, a lot of changes happening. Now, yes, these are still like throwing a little pebble in the Pacific Ocean in the greater scheme of financial services, but change is occurring, and people are recognizing that change is occurring. But the question is are they doing anything about it? It's still very slow. Part of the issue is ultimately that right now, if you look at financial services generally instills negative emotions in people, right? Emotions are extremely powerful when it comes to purchasing decisions. But I don't think anyone thinks, yeah, great, I can't wait to go to my bank today, right? It just doesn't happen. They're negative emotions. Imagine if we could reframe that. Imagine if banks, you as bankers, I hope you're still pretending, could seek to delight the customer. How would you change the way you deliver services? How would you change the way you develop services that you give to your customers? It's an interesting thought. Part of the issues, to me, is that it's actually the way that financial services has developed over time, even the word financial services in itself, and the way that financial services has been productized. I don't know about you, but I don't wake up in the morning wanting to buy a mortgage or buy a loan. I wake up wanting to buy a house, wanting to buy a car. The mortgage and the loan facilitate my purchase. I could argue, if I had more time, that financial services in its entirety, even with the most complex products that there are in the market, derivatives, asset-backed securities, whatever it may be, actually all boils down to enabling me to make transactions today or transactions tomorrow. That's my simple need, right? But yet, financial services has become convoluted and productized, where we have to focus on those actual individual products and understand it in detail. I don't have time, and I work in this arena. I don't have time to understand all these details. What if we reframed this? What if we looked at it in a different way? What if we said, it's not financial services? What if we said we're in the business of being a financial enabler? It makes us think differently about what we deliver to market. In my mind, arguably, financial services should be invisible. It should just happen. You look at trials that have been run in the US with Amazon Go recently. You walk into a supermarket, you fill up your shopping trolley, you walk out, the payment happens. Taking out a car, taking out a mobile, if that's the way you want to pay, that's a friction point in the process of a transaction. Shouldn't we be working towards developing things which remove that friction as opposed to causing more friction? As financial services professionals, you need to be thinking about how you work and engage with financial technology. Some firms are. Most firms, as large institutions are prone to do, will take a multi-pronged approach in terms of their strategy. I mean, I've generally broken it down to these 6 core buckets. Some are still, unfortunately, ignoring it. I do see smirks on people's faces when I talk about things that are happening and the way the world is changing and the way customers' behaviors are changing and the way we need to deliver services in a different way. People believe that it's fine. We have the lion's share of the market. Nobody can touch us. Then I show them this. And I say, never think you're untouchable. Because if you ignore, you can and will die. It has happened before, and it will happen again. History, in this case, repeats. If the business strategy doesn't embrace change, if the business strategy doesn't look to develop and move forward and understand where their customers are going, no matter how much market power you have, you will lose. I remind you all that even in the past 10 years, and you look at the top 10 rankings around, say, capital markets trading volumes, in my particular field, FX, the rankings have changed. Certain banks have fallen from grace in a massive way. Banks have gone bankrupt. Things do change. Never think you're untouchable. Kodak, as most of you already know, I mean, one of the most famous examples, 85% market share gone. Because they didn't think technology, they needed to embrace technology. What I would say to you is that change is happening, it's inevitable. You can't do anything about it. But the key here is about you need to take control of change. You can let others do it. You can say, this is not my responsibility, we'll figure it out. But if you don't take control of change, you potentially will be impacted, right? So on Rohit's presentation, he talked about automation and job losses. There is an element of cannibalization, and I know there's a fear within the financial services industry about job losses. However, most studies, there's a great professor at Boston University called James Besson who's looked at historically since the 1980s the impact of automation across industries. What he's found is that yes, initially there is cannibalization, but in the long term, employment rises. There is a shift from low-skilled jobs to high-skilled jobs. People get paid more, are better equipped, and there are more jobs available because automation leads to growth. The key is, though, that you need to take control of it. Because if you don't take control of it, you will ultimately be slapped in the face and it will leave a permanent red mark. And I don't want that to be me. I hope you don't want it to be you either. You want to be there. You want to be changing. You want to take control. My question is, can you? Can you break through the cultural dynamics in your firm? Can you overcome your fears? Can you move forward and do what is necessary to ensure your personal survival and your business survival in the industry of financial services over the next 5 to 10 years? Thank you.